All right, we're live for our third weekly webinar. So, all right, to get things started, I guess before we get things started, so how's your running going?
It's going. I haven't been. I've been training, but it's just I'm not a runner, so it's been brutal. To
Yeah,
me, running is a chore. It's not something that I look forward to doing. So I'll be very happy once this marathon is done. That's for sure.
when's the marathon?
It's in 2 weeks. It's May 4th.
All
So be
right. Yeah.
up in Fort Collins, and yeah,
I mean, I can make a Star Wars joke. May the fourth be
yeah,
with you. But
yeah. Hopefully, while I'm running.
yeah, I know it'd be kind of
Yeah.
nice to have that force behind you, so just kind of pushing you through. But yeah, you got that, and I got shoulder recovery. So super fun. So I don't get to do all the stuff and be near as active as you
Yeah,
right
don't be
now.
jealous. I'm
Yeah,
definitely not jealous of
the,
the shoulder recovery.
no, yeah, joys of combat training in the Marines. So rip both my shoulders apart and had shoulder replacement and getting to deal with that for the next. I don't know. I think I'm 9 weeks in now. So anyway, not that people really care about that, but just want to at least talk a little bit about some of the other stuff that we have going on in our lives other than just Tarvent, because like everybody else, we have other things going on too. So
Yeah.
yeah, and all right, so to kind of get started, our blog for this week, I can kind of share my screen and we can get that going in here. So let me pull that up. Here we go. So I add that to it. Kind of rearrange this a little bit. All right. So that's not the blog. So here we go. So here's the blog for the week. So just kind of talking about. Well, actually, I think I jumped ahead, so that's my fault. But so we talked last week about, before we get to the blog, let's talk about some of the updates we did, because we kind of did a big one yesterday. Um, I know I lost at least a few hairs on my head, so it's
Yeah.
definitely thinning out even more. But yeah, so we did a big release yesterday on the website or on our platform with these. We're calling them custom domains, but it's really not custom domains other than for sending. So it's just the ability. I guess I can pull this up really quick. This is in our. It's just a demo account here, but I'll pull this up just so you can kind of see. So we have some new we have a new layout for our domains. Indicates site tracking and indicates if these are sending domains, if they're enabled. And we have the badges, kind of like we talked about last week, because both of us are into Garmin and other things that give these badges. It's kind of a, I don't know, maybe we're really competitive or who knows, but we like to be rewarded, I guess. So yeah, so these badges are kind of cool because they just let us know where the domain is at. So it's available for sending. That's the first badge that we have here. Then we have the second badges for domain keys, or I'm sorry, not domain keys. This is this is for the mail custom domain, and I'll get into that in a second. And then the last one is for DMARC. So I'll kind of go into one just so we can see what it looks like here. So we've got a bunch of stuff in here, but this domain, how this is set up is this guy, this domain, we've got our standard DKIM records that we had before, so those are kind of the same. Our DMARC record, same as before. We're kind of strict on the DMARC. If you don't have this last CNAME, this third CNAME, if you don't have that set up, then this DMARC, your policy has to be set to none. So that's just the P on this DMARC record, but that has to be set to none. So if you don't have this, if you do have this other record in here, that goes to our MX Share 2023, and we just named it that because that's when we officially started with Tarvent. But anyway, so if you put that in, then you can put your DMARC record to reject, which I know some of our customers have been asking for that. I'm I'm assuming on your side, Derek. Well, I know from your side, you've been hearing quite a bit about asking for reject, correct?
Yep. Yeah. Yep. So allow them to finally set that up as reject, which just it helps prevent against phishing is the main thing it does. So just
Yeah.
it makes it a lot harder for someone to send out using your domain.
Yep. So anyway, so we've this right here is missing. So because this is missing, and I've got this set to reject, then this domain isn't passing. So that's the only reason this domain isn't passing. But we kind of did a few things in here to make this easier. This push doesn't, this new feature doesn't seem like a lot. But I will tell you, we probably had over 300 files that we had to modify in our code. So there was a lot. So Derek and I were stressed kind of bad to get this all released, but we got it. And we've had a few bumps. There's been a couple things that we're needing to address, but we're getting to it. So what are the other things? See, I know the custom domains one.
Yeah, and then just on the same thing, if you want to go back into that and go to the site tracking.
Oh yeah,
which I don't think it's enabled on this one. But yeah, so we changed how the site tracking domain is verified because the issue that our system was running into is that if you put the site tracking script on your website, then there's some websites that don't allow our servers to load your website to check to see if that script is there. So there would be occurrences where people would put the script on their website, go to verify it, and it just doesn't show up that it's verified because of that issue. And so we changed this now so that instead of our system going to your website to check to see if that script is there, we have a button that you'll click, which is shown there for check domain. So once you click that button, it'll open up your website. And if the script is on your website, it'll open up a dialog saying that site tracking is verified. So all the verification happens on your website instead of our system trying to load it and doing the verification behind the scenes. You can just check it real time at any time you want. So yeah, it'll click that button, it'll go to your website, it'll open up a dialog saying that site tracking is verified, and then you'll know you're good to go.
Yeah, and I know there are some cases, especially if you are familiar with coding and you do different things on your website where you may only load the script up depending on certain scenarios. Then even in that case, it may still not verify just because you haven't loaded the script yet. So there are still some cases where it may not verify, but we've gotten rid of most of the cases. And even if it doesn't verify, it'll still work. So the verification is more for your sake than for ours. So as long as it's there and you know from a developer's perspective that it's loaded up and running, then you're good. So, but we tried, like Derek said, we're trying to make this as easy as possible and handle as many different scenarios as possible. How Derek kind of described it is leaving it less techy, I will say. So we'll kind of go with that for now. But yeah, there's some really techy reasons why we had to do what we did. Yeah. So I guess, yes. What's the next one here?
Yeah, so this is just repeating from last week too, but it's live now, so we just want to bring it to your guys' attention again. It's just that the unsubscribe link will be required for any campaign that's sent out now. And this is it's driven because of deliverability stuff we've ran into because of people not having the unsubscribe link, but it's also driven due to the changes that Microsoft, Gmail, and Yahoo, kind of the biggest ISPs in the game, they're making changes to how they classify their emails. And so if your email is missing that unsubscribe link, you're not going to be, it's more likely your email will be sent to spam. It's not like a hard set rule, but it's a very highly suggested rule by the ISPs to include a unsubscribe link in your content. So we're requiring in our system because it's just, I would understand it as being required. It's highly suggested, but just it's a big deal if you don't have it.
Yeah, and all these, Yahoo and AOL, which is also Yahoo, and Gmail and Microsoft, they're all getting more and more strict. And so that unsubscribe link, from what we've seen by the guidelines, it is required, but it's a guideline. So we just put it as required because, these are going to get more and more strict, and these links have to work. Otherwise, if they find out that they don't work, they're going to flag you and it won't be good. So yeah, so we've got that. So I think that's kind of it for what we released. I mean, it doesn't look like a lot, but oh my gosh, there were a lot of things, because not only did we release this stuff, which was super, super nice, but when you're in the prototyping and you're the early stages, you do things one way only to find out that, man, you wish you would have done it another way because it just makes life easier. Well, this is one of those areas. So as we progressed and we understood more of how people use the system and how we're using the system and all that, we had to make some changes to it. So it is so much more simplified and streamlined now. Again, there's a couple little kinks that we're working out. We tested everything in dev and locally and all this stuff, but there's still a couple things that we found out once we went to prod that we needed to address. So there's still a couple things. So if you are one of our customers and you run into a couple issues, which we have gotten a couple support tickets on, not too many. And I think a couple, literally, I think we've gotten 2. So we haven't gotten too many, considering we're in like 88 countries now. 2 support tickets, not too bad. We're pretty happy about that. But anyway, so we're working on those kinks. But anyway, so enough of that. So let's get to the blog, because that's kind of what it's a next topic that we want to talk about here. And this is this is a big one. And this actually goes into, it's awesome because somebody asked a question that relates to this sort of capability that we have within our tool and this internal debate that you guys may have. So Derek, I'll let you kind of talk about this up front, because I'm pretty sure you're the author on this anyway. So I'll let you get started on this one and give us your thoughts on it.
Yeah. So the blog is obviously about sending daily campaigns versus weekly campaigns and when it's appropriate to do those. So we've had a lot of customers that have run into issues with this, just because they don't know, should I send a campaign every day to try to get more engagement? I mean, if I'm sending more email, that should result in more engagement, right? Like that's their thinking. But in most cases, that's not true. So in most cases, you don't want to send daily email because it'll end up frustrating your recipients, your contacts. It'll end up frustrating them because they're getting all this email into their inbox. Although there are cases where daily email is appropriate. So this blog post kind of went through that, going over when it's appropriate to send daily and when you should send weekly. And honestly, it's not a black and white thing. It's not, you should do this or should do that. There's a lot of testing involved and just seeing what frequencies work for your use case. This blog is kind of just a guideline, things you should look at when sending. And so one of the main points it talks about in the beginning of the blog is that if your email isn't providing value, meaning you're just sending an email to send it, it's destined to fail. Meaning you're not going to get a lot of opens, you're not going to get a lot of interaction, because ultimately, if the email doesn't have anything of value in it, no one's going to read it, and no one's going to open it, no one's going to click it. So the first thing you want to pay attention to when you're building your campaign is ask yourself the question, what value is this content providing my contacts? When they open this email, are they going to leave this email knowing something they didn't before, or what value are you giving to them when you send this email? And once you answer that question, then you can,
I was just going to say on that, just before you kind of go on, one of the other things too, not to play bad cop here, but to bring up some of the other changes that are going on between, like I said, Yahoo, Google, or Yahoo and Gmail and Microsoft are all kind of coming together and forming some additional standards for how they qualify email. So with that is engagement. So we talk about engagement here, and that's one of the things that you're talking about is making sure you provide that value. So with that value, you need to make sure that the value is there and that people are engaging with the email. So engagement is opens and clicks for the most part. And opens are a tough one to go off of, obviously, because with iOS 15 and above, there's new privacy stuff, and Gmail was, they're like on again, off again. But I think Gmail also is downloading images. So iOS and Gmail are downloading images with a proxy server. So all the images get downloaded. As a result of all images getting downloaded, there's a lot of opens that are false, but they're being downloaded. So it'll detect as an open. So your opens aren't going to be as accurate as they were before. So we tell people go off of clicks. You want to make sure you go off of clicks. So if your engagement isn't up or your clicks aren't up, then you may be sending too often. So
Yeah.
sorry, and I just wanted to bring that up just because that engagement is going to impact deliverability because their AI systems, as we all know, AI is becoming much, much more prevalent. So with that AI, if you're not getting good engagement, they're going to start flagging those emails and not delivering them.
Yep.
So there's my
Yeah,
negative part of it, but
no,
hate to play
it's good
bad
to bring
cop,
up.
but it's how it goes.
Yeah. No, I think it's good because I mean, I'm pretty active in different deliverability spaces on the internet, just like Slack channels, whatever else. And that whole issue of ISPs starting to mark emails as spam due to low engagement is becoming more and more prevalent. So it's really important to focus on your engagement because ISPs like Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, they're going to start flagging your emails as spam if that engagement's low. So it's a really good point to bring up. But yeah, so continue on with the blog. Another thing that it stresses that consistency is key. So, and this goes for warming IPs. This goes for having good deliverability. You need to have a consistent sending schedule. If you go 1 week sending once a week, and then the next week you go to sending every single day, the ISPs are going to say, "Hey, what's going on? Why are you starting to send so much email?" And they'll end up blocking some of your mail because of that increased volume just out of nowhere. So the biggest thing is just you need to have consistency, whether that be sending twice a week, once a week, every day of the week. It's just stay consistent with your sending. And then, yeah, moving on. So we also talk about in the blog how more email does not equal more results. I kind of talked about this in the beginning. Is just, yeah, if you're thinking that, oh, I just need to send out more email and I'm going to get more clicks, I'm going to get more conversions, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, most times it's not the case. It's you need more quality content and you need a more quality subject lines. Then you don't need to send more email. You just need more quality. So quality over quantity.
Yeah, with that, I was just going to say, with that, the two things you want to look at is three things is your engagement of those clicks, but then also the unsubscribes and the spam complaints. So if your spam complaints are too high, or if your unsubscribes are too high, then you may be sending too often. If your unsubscribes are too high or spam complaints, you might also want to look at enabling double opt-in in our system. So where they have to confirm their opt-in before it actually sends out. But anyway, sorry, keep butting in, but just want to add my 2 cents or half a cent, whatever it is.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it. So yeah, and then continue on. The other point I stressed in this blog post is just to test different frequencies. So just because something works for one company doesn't mean it's going to work for your company. So it's good to just start testing different frequencies. Just don't do big jumps, kind of like I talked about earlier. If you're sending once a week, don't just all of a sudden start sending every day of the week. Maybe try sending once a week and then start trying to send twice a week, then 3 times a week, and just see how your engagement varies based on those different frequencies. So, and again, just like Jason had said, this is all based on your engagement and also checking your spam complaints and unsubscribes, because that's kind of going to give you an idea of, are people getting annoyed? Because if they're getting annoyed, they're going to either unsubscribe or they're going to mark it as spam. So, and if they mark it as spam, that means they're really annoyed. So usually they'll unsubscribe before they'll do a spam complaint. So if you're getting spam complaints, that's a pretty good indication that you need to start slowing things down, or you just need to rethink your content so it applies more to your contacts. But yeah, just testing and checking your engagements is a really big deal.
Definitely. And I just can't reiterate enough that you just want to make sure that your spam complaints are low. So one of the other things that is kind of a challenge with that is like, we brought this up before, but I'm going to keep harboring on this because like Derek said, we both deal with deliverability all the time. We're a small team. and we have a really large platform that we wear a lot of hats. But on that deliverability side, spam is a huge issue. So we want to make sure that your spam rate is low. And what we mean by low is not necessarily what I think other people understand low to be. If somebody sees that their campaign that they sent out only got a 1% spam rate, and like, oh my gosh, that's awesome, only 1%. Well, in our world, that's 10 times higher than it should be. So you should be at a 0.01% spam rate. So actually 100 times. So, I mean, you really should be down to that 0.01%. So basically 1 in 1,000 emails. So if you get one spam complaint out of 1,000 emails, that's kind of that limit. Once you get above that limit, there can start to be blocks. So it gets really, really, these ISPs are getting really strict, and they're getting a whole lot smarter because of AI. So yeah, you want to make sure the spam complaints are low. In addition to that, we're also seeing that like Yahoo and many of the others, they may not send back the spam complaints. So there's this thing called a feedback loop. And so with these feedback loop, it's kind of a back channel that Yahoo will send us information on a back channel to let us know that an email was considered spam. And then we can determine, based on the information they give us, we can determine who reported it as spam. But if your spam rate is too high, Yahoo will actually stop sending those feedback loop emails. So if they do that, then that means we can't even report the spam. So that's why it's just such a big deal to make sure that your frequency test, I would say always start on the conservative side and then build up from there. You definitely don't want to start blasting 3, 4, 5 times a day, and then your spam rate goes super high, and then you're blocked. So we don't want that. But anyway, something that we're going to keep harboring on all the time. It's one of the most misunderstood parts of email marketing. People just think, oh, I can put in an email in the content, click send, and it magically works. I wish it were the case. We haven't found that magic yet. It just takes an enormous amount of work on our side to make sure that everything goes through and it stays nice and clean, and we get really good deliverability. We do get good deliverability, but it takes work. So we want your guys' help to make sure that the deliverability stays high with low spam. So with that, I guess onto the Q&A. So Q&A is always fun for me because I like getting questions. I do a lot more on the sales side than Derek does, so I usually answer a lot of those questions. Derek answers an enormous number of questions on the support side. Me, I typically answer the questions on the sales side because I tend to talk a lot. So with that, so let's see. So the first one, and I've had this question, Derek's had this question a bunch. Does Tarvent have the equivalent of active campaigns message variation? So, message variables. So in active campaign, there's a thing called message variables that you can set up. And those variables that you can then add within a campaign, so you have your content that shows up. So in our system, yes, we do. So we have the same kind of thing. We just call them content blocks. So you have your files, and this is if you're using folders. If I don't want to use folders, I don't have to. But I can go in here, and in content blocks, I don't have anything. But I can create a content block with this, and I'm going to just call this, we'll just call it webinar sample. Super awesome name. So with that, this editor looks just like a campaign editor. So a journey email. I mean, all of our editors kind of look the same, but you can start adding in all of your content. So I can drag content in, do what I need to do. Once I have this saved, then I can save this here. We're going to leave it with some Lorem Ipsum text for now. But then when I go back into my email, I can come down here and let's say I just want to add in, a content block. So I could put that anywhere. Not that I'd want to put it right here, but there's where I could put that in. So now it'll merge in that content block. So you can have standard content, and that content can get put in. wish I could talk about some of the other stuff we used to have that we're probably going to end up bringing back. It's some cool features on there. It basically allows your server to generate content per email. So I won't go into it too much, but it's a feature down the road once we get more requests for it. But anyway,
Yeah.
this is kind of how that works. But
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to the content block because another question that comes up in support too is that if you put a content block into your email, at that point you can't edit it. So the only place you can edit your content block is within the library. So is that first area that Jason was showing the content block creation. So the content block, once it's edited in your library and you save it, it's locked in. So once you drag it onto an email, then you can't edit it. But that said, if you do make edits to your content block in the library, and then you go back into your email, the email will have those updated changes. So
yeah, so you can edit the content block. You just can't edit it within the email.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Okay. You kind of made it sound like maybe you couldn't edit it at all, but it's not locked in. It's linked. So it's a linked content block. So you show the results in here, but you can easily go back into your library and make changes, and then it'll show up.
You just can't edit it within the email.
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of times this would be good to add for your header and your footer. It's just standard content that you can have readily available, so you don't have to keep making changes to it all the time within your email. You can just kind of standardize that content. So anyway, so yes, we do have that. We implement a little bit different than they do, but yeah, we do have content blocks or message variables in Active Campaign. All right, next question here. Let's see. So how can I send an email to everybody that did not click the link or did not click or open a campaign? So let's see. So we'll go in on that one. I have no idea how to do this. Actually, I'm kidding. So oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, that one, I guess you could do it. I was going to find a campaign that had contacts that didn't open, but it's fine. You can still show it with this one.
It's kind of the same way, but yeah. So this from here, like if I want to send, I guess, let's see if I go to clicks, this is a horrible one just because I don't have, I think all of these, I only sent it to one person on here. Do you have one open?
Yeah, I could share my screen quick.
So I can add you to it, and you can take over and show this one how it works.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's two different ways you can make this work. I'll jump this over to Derek's and see how that goes.
It's a little pretty small. All right,
yeah, I don't know why Derek always has the smallest text on earth. I know he's at, probably by the time he hits 30. No, probably by the time he hits 35, I need glasses. But
yeah, probably. Yeah, so this is really big. All right, here we go. So here's a campaign that one person opened it, one person didn't. So at least there's that. So yeah, if you go into the campaign report, so I guess just to show you how I got here. So I was just on the campaign list screen and I clicked this campaign called Breaking Changes. So if you open up that campaign report and then go to the opens page, then in here, there's a little paper plane icon above the contact list. So if you click this paper plane icon, then you can send a campaign to the contacts that open the email or send a campaign to contacts that did not open the email. And it's the same thing on the clicks page. So it looks the exact same. It just, instead of open, it says clicked. So if I click send a campaign to contacts that did not open, then it opens the campaign create screen. So in here, you can select what type of campaign you want to send. And then a common thing that people want to do is they want to send the same campaign to the people that did not open again. So, and usually they'll do that and change like the subject line or whatever else just to make a minor change. So to find that campaign, you can come into account campaigns, and then this is the campaign that Breaking Changes. But the campaigns that you had previously sent are under this account campaigns area. So I'll just select that and then give it a name. And then it already, yeah, I know. But yeah, and it already has the audience pre-selected because we're sending to the same audience. And so just so you guys understand what this does behind the scenes is that it creates a segment in your audience. So it creates a segment to say everyone that did not open this specific campaign, include them into this segment. And then when you create the campaign, it's going to create the campaign and then include that segment as the recipients that should be sent to. So I'll just click add.
Now, will they see that segment? They won't see that segment though, correct?
If they go into their audience, they will. So
Okay.
if you go into your audience and go into segments, then you'll see one that I guess I can just go in there and
No, that's
show
fine.
it.
I just wanted to clarify. I kind of knew the answer to that, but just want to make sure.
Yeah. So then in here, I just opened up the campaign recipients so you can see that it created this segment called breaking changes, did not open, and then some random number. We just do that just to prevent duplicate segment names. So anyways, yeah, so breaking changes did not open and it included this segment by default. So there were 24 contacts in this audience that did not open that email. So that's the easiest way to send a campaign to everyone that did not open the email. And you can do did open, did not click, did click. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I think we answered that one pretty well. So now the next one, and we're going to go back to sending domains. So since you're sharing your screen, you can just go back to domains and the additional CNAME record. So we talked about that a little bit, just for pointing to our mx.shared2023.trvt.io. Why would you add that record? So that's a question. Nobody asked that because it's just getting released, but people have wanted this. So we want to make sure we answer that question so people understand why it's in there. So I'm going to try to not get too technical with this one. But basically, when you send out an email, there's a thing called email authentication. So with email authentication, there's three main parts to email authentication. There's SPF, there's DKIM, and there's DMARC. So with all of that, there's also this thing called alignment. So when your email is aligned, that means that you're from, and we talked about this last time, so I guess I have to get into this a little bit more. So when you send out an email, think of it like a regular snail mail, like a traditional letter that you're going to send. You have the to address, you have the from address on the outside of the envelope. That's going to be like your official, the Johnsons or whatever, and you have your address and all that stuff. So now you're going to have that. And then on the inside, on the actual letter, you're going to say from grandma and grandpa or from dad or, whatever you've got. So the inside is saying dad, the outside is saying Johnson's. So if you want to have the best alignment, then you're going to want those two to match. So you're going to want the outside to say the Johnsons. You're going to want the inside to also say the Johnsons. So now you have that really good alignment. So now from a technical perspective, the other ISPs that are receiving the email like Yahoo and in Gmail and whatnot, they see that the email is more aligned. When they see that alignment, they're going to look at that email even more favorably than before. So your deliverability can actually go up as a result of putting in the CNAME record. So when you put in that extra CNAME down at the bottom there, once you put that in, then our system takes that into account and will send that email out. So now your email is aligned with both that from and the mail from, which is kind of that outside. Some people refer to it as the return path, and there's many other names from a technical perspective. But anyway, so those two things, when they align, you just get even better deliverability. So that is one of the reasons that we put that in there. The other reason we put that in there is because some people want to set their DMARC policy to reject. What that tells the ISPs is if they get email from any other server than what you allow, then they should reject that email. That way, if it's spam, it doesn't count against you. It doesn't count against you at all. So the only way to set up that DMARC as reject is first put in that CNAME record. Once you do that, then you can change your DMARC record, which we show with none because that's the bare minimum that you have to have. I think I added too many M&Ms or whatever in that minimum. But anyway, so so once you have to have the none, but once you have that extra CNAME record in there, then you can set it to reject and you're good to go. The only caveat with all of this is that you don't want to use your root domain. So in our case, we're tarvent.com. So within our system, we're not going to want to set up tarvent.com as a sending domain. The reason for that is we send our corporate email from tarvent.com. So once you put in the CNAME for some of this other stuff, it's really not going to allow that domain to be used for anything else. So that's why we say always use the subdomain. So you could put like e.tarvent.com or email.tarvent or updates.tarvent, or there's a number of different, you can put any sort of subdomain you want. So there's a couple things on that. Sorry it's so technical, but this is kind of a technical thing. All I can tell you is the best case scenario for you is to use a subdomain and then put all the records that we have in there. If you put all those records in and you set DMARC to reject, you're going to have the best possible setup that you can have. So you're going to have the best possible chance of deliverability by doing that. Anything you want to add on that one?
Yeah, just something that's come up in support, just the way they ask the question. So to kind of simplify what adding the CNAME will do, in Gmail, when email was sent using Tarvent, you would see that via, however you pronounce it. So you'd see that via trvt.io. And so by adding the CNAME in, it's going to remove that via trvt.io, because now it's going to be coming from the same domain as your sending domain, or from domain. So yeah, it'll remove that little via trvt.io in Gmail, because that's just something that's come up in support that they'll ask, like, how do I get this to go away? And so, yeah, this will do that.
All right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. So the next question, and we get this one a lot. People are asking about, well, we don't get this question about this particular competitor a lot, but we do get this question a lot. So what the question is why is our pricing so much more than somebody like Flowdesk? So, Flowdesk, and I don't want to hack on any of our competitors. I don't want to talk negatively about any of them, because they all spend an enormous amount of time building their application to their specification of what they feel brings value to the customer. So we don't want to talk negatively about anybody, but we will say that with companies like Flowdesk, or anybody else that has very, very low pricing. I think with Flowdesk, it was like $35 a month, and you get unlimited contacts, unlimited sending, just unlimited, and you're able to do a whole bunch of stuff. Those systems like that, they sound really good up front. They're really, really inexpensive. Excuse me. So they're really inexpensive, but there's a price to be paid by going with the least expensive solution out there. So a lot of these companies, they don't have the resources to worry about deliverability. In a lot of cases, they don't even own their own mail servers, or they are doing things where they just use a little. I don't know about Flowdesk, so I'm certainly not talking about them and what they do. But in a lot of these, what they have are just really basic mail servers that are just these, it costs $100 to buy a mail server in their case, where ours costs, thousands and thousands of dollars to buy just a license for one mail server. But anyway, they set them up really basic. So your deliverability is going to be impacted. Performance of the systems are going to be impacted. Your support's going to be impacted, because at that lower rate, I mean, just think about the numbers for a second. If if it's only $35, why isn't everybody going to them? There's a reason. And if you go out to Reddit, I'd always say go out to Reddit, because that's where people tend to talk the most honest about any platform out there. Go look up the other platforms and see what people are saying about them, and you'll hear from them. And I know our opinion is going to be biased, because we obviously offer a competing platform. But if you go out to Reddit, you can see what people say about all those different platforms out there. So while they look like, yep, they do email marketing. We do email marketing, so they're cheaper. They must be better. They're not the same thing. Our journey system is a lot more complex, has a lot more capabilities than what a lot of these other systems have. So it's just not comparing apples to apples. It's more like comparing apples to, I don't know, a penny. So, something completely different that doesn't really, they don't correlate other than they have the same basic thing of they are an email marketing platform, but that's kind of the extent.
Yeah,
Anything you want to
kind
add
of
on
adding
that?
on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say like a big difference too is how flexible our system is. So like in a lot of systems, let's just take the unsubscribe form for example. In a lot of systems, it's just preset. You can't change. You may be able to change like what reasons why people opted out, or you might be able to change a couple things within the form, but you can't really brand that form to look like your brand. And so something like in our system, every aspect of our tool, you can make it branded to look like it's your company. So it's not a cookie cutter form that everyone uses, that everyone that uses this platform will have the same looking form. You can brand everything in our system, which adds a lot of complexity and just adds a lot of flexibility, but also makes your company look a lot more professional. So that adds to the complexity and flexibility of the system.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to steal your screen for this next one here.
Yeah, that's fine.
So, yeah, this next question, this is a great one. So, they're bringing up Active Campaign again. And we certainly don't want to harp on Active Campaign. There's a lot of competitors out there. Active Campaign has a pretty robust journey platform or automation platform. They're one of the ones that we looked at when we were building our platform on trying to figure out ways we can do things better and different and kind of make us unique compared to them. So, but they do have a robust platform. So we get a lot of questions because people are finding out that we also have a very robust automation platform, and so they're trying to switch over accounts. I think we had one guy. I think he switched over like 30 accounts over to us from them, which was awesome for us. Apologize to Active Campaign, but they like our platform and it worked well for them. So I
Friendly
guess I'm going to say
competition.
that's a win. What's that?
Said friendly competition.
Yep, friendly competition. It's always healthy. It's always a win to the customers when there's a competition. So with that, so the question that was asked is, in Active Campaign, they use if-then logic to decide if they want to do something. If they don't want to do it, then it's false, and so then they'll join up with the journey. So an example of this is like in this particular case, this email. If I don't only want to send this email to people that have a certain condition, then you're going to have to, in Active Campaigns world, you'd add in a decision split, which I think we have. Yeah, so we have a decision split here. We call a decision split, I believe Active Campaign calls it an if-then. And it's mainly because in their world, their if-then is just true or false. So you have two paths that you can go down. Our decision split is you can have up to 10 paths. So, if 2 is great, 10 must be a lot better, right? So we do find this to be extremely beneficial because people want to do different things. But the main question is how can I just skip this node or this step based on a condition? So in Active Campaign world, that's what they do. In our world, a little bit different. And so we have this contact criteria. So we could say that this step applies to all contacts or only to contacts that meet certain criteria. And then we go into here, we can add in basically our segmentation. So this is the same editors, our segmentation rules and our trigger filtering and all that. So you can go in here and put in certain criteria. So only people that meet this criteria will get the email sent to them. Oops, I'm pointing at the wrong one here. So they'll get that email sent to them. Everybody else skips this step and goes on to the next step. So we actually did a comparison, and again, not to hack, but this is just to show what the exact same journey looks like in our platform versus somebody like Active Campaign. So look at Active Campaign first. So in the Active Campaign world, you've got these if steps. So if something is true, then you go down this path, and then you jump back over to your next condition, and then you do an if, and then you'll see the scroll bar here. We just couldn't fit it within this screen, but you have all these if conditions that will do a certain activity if it's true. We saw this and we're like, wow, that's a little bit on the complex side. That would be a little bit overwhelming, especially to somebody that's new. So now with our system, this is the exact same journey. We fit it all into one screen. Does the exact same thing, but the difference is our conditions that you can specify on a per step basis. So we could put those conditions in there per step. It just makes it a million times easier. So it's just a lot easier to manage this way versus the other way. I would say one other cool, just because we're in here, the other really cool thing that we have is this popular path. So with your decision splits, especially if you want to know what the most popular path is that people are flowing through your journey, you can look at this report. It's the first report that shows up. I'm all about visuals because I think that's the best way for people to understand. It's not how I learn, but that's what we know most people like. And so we came up with this visual that just gives you this green path, so you can see exactly what path people went down, even on decision splits and all sorts of other types of splits and flow. We call them flow steps. But any of these flow steps, you can see where they went. So anyway, that was just a question, is they have if then. What do we do on our side to handle that? Because we don't have if then, we have decision split, but we just do things in a lot different way. So just makes it a lot easier. And this criteria, we have it all over the place. So on pretty much every step, except for weight nodes right now, we don't have that. We are going to be putting that in. But anyway, so these criteria, this criteria is available on all the different steps. So, or we call them action steps, and you'll actually see that here. We have flow and action. So on all those action steps, you can do that. So another one of the fun questions that's come up, and don't mean to gloat, but it is a lot easier in our solution to do that sort of thing. Last question we got for today just is, let's see. So the last question we've got, or maybe we have one more, but oh, no, all right. So just looking at our live chat here, one question that did come up about our live chat, and we apologize, on our website, the webinar isn't showing up. You have to go to YouTube. So if you're seeing us, you're probably on YouTube, or you're watching it after the fact. We're working on that on our website. We have to work with a vendor to get that issue resolved. But anyway, the last question people ask about, and I'll actually go back to the homepage here, is, well, in this case, this guy has 0 contacts, which is awesome. But they wonder about billing. So with the contacts. So I'm going to just jump into an audience, actually, because that number, again, it's a demo account. So take these numbers with a grain of salt. But anyway, so in our system, the question is Klaviyo has changed how they do billing. This is just from them, because we don't, we try to keep up on our competitors, but there's a lot of them. So it's difficult to know what each one of them does and how their changes impact us. A lot of times we learn from our customers or people looking at becoming customers. So they say Klaviyo has changed contact count algorithm to include all contacts, including unsubscribes and more. So apparently that's a thing in Klaviyo. So in our system, how it works is it's only the active. So it will not count pending. Pending are for the double opt-in. So they'll opt in, and then they sit in a pending status until they click the link within a confirmation email. So pending, undeliverable, unsubscribed, reported spam, and suppressed, all of those don't count. So the only ones that count against your bill or against your accounts with Tarvent is going to be this active account. So that keeps your costs low. There is a hit to us, and we understand why Klaviyo did what they did, because if you unsubscribe, it doesn't really matter that you unsubscribed. From our perspective, yes, you're not sending email to them anymore, but I can easily still go into the record and I can see all their past activity. I can see all sorts of things about that contact, even though they're unsubscribed or undeliverable or pending. So in other words, we're still keeping a lot of data about that person. So there is a cost to that. However, because we've built things the way that we've done, we're able to keep our pricing the same and not increase our pricing to, well, we're not necessarily increasing. I don't know if Klaviyo actually increased their price. It just costs you more because now they're counting all these other contacts as well. So with that, Derek, do you think of any other questions that have come up that people are asking?
No, I mean, I think the only other thing I wanted to bring up, just kind of circling back to the company updates, just to make sure to check your guys' domains, just to make sure everything's validating. We are a little stricter on the validation now, so if your DMARC record has quarantine, but you don't have the additional CNAME record set up, then your domain will not validate. So just please go and check your domains and just make sure everything's set up correctly. But as for questions, yeah, I think that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing on that policy, it has to say P equals none, or if you don't have the other record in there, you can't have P equals space none. So technology is super, super picky. So you can't have spaces in front of the word none. You can't, none of that stuff is allowed. So, and that's not just our system. That's just how the internet works. So you need to make sure that you don't have spaces and that it equals none, unless you have that extra record that we're putting in. So with that, I hope you guys like our Q&A. If you don't, let us know. If you do, also let us know. If you have questions, let us know. So there's lots of ways that you can submit questions. You can either go to our website. If you're in Tarvent, the platform, then you can submit questions through that. So you can ask questions however you want. If you want to send us a support ticket, you can do that. But we do ask that you like and subscribe on YouTube. It helps us out, gets more visibility, so more people know about Tarvent. We are not a funded company, so we really appreciate anything that you guys do to help us out. So so fill out that form. Ask whatever questions you want to ask. If there's some weird question you want to ask about Derek or I know one question I would have is, why am I so ghostly looking on these YouTube, on these webinars versus Derek? And that's something I realize. I am just extremely white, but yeah, I'm working on that one. But so any questions that you want to ask, you can go ahead and ask that. We're pretty lighthearted about everything. We're trying to loosen up a little bit on here, but we're getting better. So also follow us on social media. So make sure you follow us on all the different channels, so you're aware of our next webinar, which is every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Right now it's UTC minus 6 hours. So if you want to be technical about it, and that's it. So our next webinar will be next week. So with that, Derek, any last words of wisdom?
No, just appreciate you guys watching and looking forward to the next one.
All right, sounds good. Well then, hey, we will talk to you guys next week or online.
Mm-hmm.